Hi everybody, I'm Marian Bennett, Caldwell banker in Half Bay. Adam Underwood is from Weller O'Brien Insurance. Thank you so much for taking your time to help us understand a little bit more about homeowners insurance. So just to kind of give our viewers a little bit of a background, everything that we do is off of the purchase contract. Even this one little line is very important in the contract, and it can be a contingency unless the buyer removes that contingency. But the buyer needs to confirm the insurability of themselves and the property. And so one of the first things that we do is say, do you have a homeowner's insurance carrier? If they're a first-time home buyer, typically they don't have one, so we recommend them. So it's really important for us to know the local carriers so that we can recommend someone that we know provides excellent service. That leads to this estimated statement, which is the summary of the contract. And you'll see at this time the homeowner's insurance is on the estimated statement, and that's right before the closing. So what I do is look at all those items to make sure that everything that's on there is consistent with the contract, and homeowner's insurance is a line item on there. Typically the buyer pays for 12 months, as you know, in advance. So if something is off in terms of, if I think something is not usually too low, but if I think something is too high, then I will, call you, as you know, or call the carrier and find out what's going on. Is there anything that you want to say related to that in terms of working with realtors and how our lives might intertwine?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from an insurance standpoint, the main thing that we do when somebody calls us up is to look at the location of the property, the age of the property. We do what's called a clue report, which pulls up any prior insurance claims that the customer may have had. And those things help us determine whether or not the house and the customer is insurable. So that's kind of the first step of what we do. And prior claims, the location, it might be in a wildfire area. There are certain things that make purchasing insurance challenging at times. So we're kind of on the same page as what your buyer is trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish as far as getting things insured.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, great. So speaking of that, is getting homeowners insurance becoming more challenging now as opposed to, let's say, 2 years ago or 5 years ago?
In certain respects, it's definitely getting harder. For the most part, in certain areas, wildfire has become a huge issue with the droughts. We've seen all the wildfires that are sweeping through California. So there are certain areas that are getting extremely challenging, even here on the coast side. Parts of Montera, parts of El Granada, Pescadero. There's places that are considered a high wildfire area and therefore are very hard to insure with preferred carriers.
That's a change that you're seeing, like
in the last year or two,
and you think
for
that
sure.
that's related to all the wildfires that are happening in California?
Oh, definitely. Insurance companies are very much trying to limit their exposure to these catastrophic losses. So they have spent a lot of money and time to get these tools to use to kind of limit their exposure.
That's because they're spreading the risk.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that is affecting rates on the coast? We do have a lot of trees. We have eucalyptus trees.
Sure.
Is it do the type of trees
yeah,
make a difference?
They do. They do. The insurance, the wildfire mapping tools look at the proximity to open space and also the type of combustibles. Eucalyptus obviously is a high wildfire concern because it goes up like paper. There are some places back in La Honda where it's surrounded by redwood trees, which don't burn as much, so it's actually easier in some of like the Cuesta area to get insurance than it is in areas like El Granada that are close to Quarry Park. So yes, they're very detailed, and every company has different mapping tools. They're not all homogeneous, but they all are trying to accomplish the exact same thing, which is to limit the exposure to wildfire. So if you're in those areas, it can be extremely hard. I mean, you can still find insurance. You're just going to pay a lot more for it.
Right. So you're saying different companies have different modeling tools?
Yes. Each one has proprietary tools that they use.
Oh, interesting.
Definitely. Yeah.
So do you ever see that becoming consistent? The tools becoming consistent, at least for a certain area?
Yeah, more and more. Some of the more liberal mapping tools, they've started to tighten those up. So companies that we could place a house with maybe 6 months ago, all of a sudden we can't because they've changed that tool to make it almost more in line with some of the more conservative mapping tools. But they are constantly changing.
Yeah, well, as you know, I was very surprised this year to actually find that one house that had been with a carrier for a very long time, then that when we were trying to find insurance for the buyer, that carrier said that they would not renew the insurance on the house that they'd had the policy with for a long time. So that was what really prompted me, finding more out from Adam about this particular topic. That was a big surprise. So another question that I'm hearing about lately is building code coverage.
Yeah.
Is it important, and why is it important?
Building code upgrade coverage, also called ordinance or law, if you're looking at your policy, is an extremely important coverage that pretty much every policy should have on it. And what it pays for is it pays after a loss to rebuild or repair the house to current building codes. Now these codes are constantly changing. If you have an older home, there's going to be a lot of code upgrades that you would have to do, obviously like fire sprinklers, for example. Even on the decking, you'd have to have your railing spaced closer together.
Right.
In some areas, you'd have to put a fire retardant roof on. It just all depends on the city and county that you're in, but these code upgrades after a loss, if you do not have the coverage on your policy, can cost tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. So it's really, really important for every single home policy to have this coverage on it. And if it's not on there, it's really inexpensive to add it.
But so why wouldn't it be on there? Is it because it's not part of the
It could be on there from
coverage?
just an oversight
Okay.
of the agent, and it could be maybe.
But it's an add-on.
It's an add-on for the most part. They're endorsements that are added to the basic home policy.
Okay.
And most of the time that it's not on there, it's simply an oversight, or maybe that wasn't offered way back when it was purchased, or it wasn't as common to be added. So if you've had your
Okay.
policy for a really long time, it might be left off. Whereas now, if you buy a policy, for the most part, it's put on every single policy.
Okay.
So it's important to look at it.
So it sounds like if you've had your policy for a long time, that it's worthwhile to go back and look just to make sure that it's on there.
Definitely, yeah, especially the old policies, but even the newer ones, just a simple, look
Just
at
check.
it, make sure it's on there.
Yeah.
It should be.
And I noticed when I checked my policy that there's different options,
Mhm.
even for that.
Yeah, every company has different endorsements and they handle it a little bit differently. For the most part, the policy, if you have the code upgrade, will pay for rebuilding it to current building codes. If you exhaust your limit of insurance on the house, let's say you insure the house for $100,000. If
$100,000?
$100,000, which is not, around here that's not reasonable, right? So let's just say
Say $1 million.
Okay, $1 million. There you go. $1 million. They'll give you an additional 20%. If you exhaust the limit, they'll give you an additional 20% on top of that to bring it up to code upgrade.
Okay.
To current building code. So,
Yeah.
$200,000. So for the most part, the building.
That sounds more realistic.
Yeah, the building code upgrade coverages should be adequate, for what the company offers. Some might have more Cadillac endorsements as far as giving you more versus less.
Yeah.
But I'd say buy as much as they offer because it's inexpensive, really.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That was something new I learned.
Yeah.
Does unpermitted work have any bearing on coverage?
Yeah.
So let's say that you're going to write a new policy, that deck permitted, or
Sure.
is that roof permitted, or
Yeah.
is that skylight permitted? I mean,
Yeah.
are these questions you ask?
No. From an insurance standpoint, the insurance companies don't care whether work is permitted or not.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
So they will pay. Let's say you have an unpermitted bonus room.
Yeah.
They'll pay to rebuild the structure as it is. The problem that you're going to have is not with the insurance company, but it's going to be with the city or county, because they probably won't let you rebuild with
Right.
that unpermitted unit in there.
Right.
So the main, from my perspective, the main importance of getting work permitted is to make sure that it's built to code, to make sure that it's safe. But from an insurance standpoint, it's not going to negate coverage,
Okay.
and they'll still pay for it if it's like a small loss, but you could still hit roadblocks with the government agencies
Okay.
that require those.
Okay, but it's good to know where it
Yeah.
stands from the
Insurance,
insurance
yeah.
perspective. So do you have any recommendations on how a homeowner can keep their coverage as low as possible?
Yeah.
Like, let's say they add something, fire sprinklers, or there's
Sure.
maybe the carrier doesn't know that there's a fire hydrant outside their house,
Uh-huh.
or is there something, if they
Yeah.
upgrade their HVAC system or anything like that?
The main thing that customers can do to reduce their insurance costs is to take a higher deductible.
Okay.
I recommend people take the highest deductible that they can afford within reason.
Mm-hmm.
Typically that caps out at about $5,000 to where the savings isn't justifiable to go above that limit.
Uh-huh.
So that's the main thing that they can do. But there are other discounts for fire-resistant roofs.
Fire-resistant roof. Okay.
Yes. So if you put a clay tile roof on or a metal roof on, it's non-combustible. You get a little bit of a discount because of that. In our area, like wood shake roofs, you get a surcharge for those types of roofs because obviously they're higher combustible. And on top of just higher deductibles, if you can, you'll want to package your auto insurance together with your homeowner insurance because you get large multi-policy discounts.
So bundling
is always important, and then taking the higher deductible. Those are the two main things that are going to make a difference. And then,
so then really I'm not hearing, other than changing your roof, which is a big expense.
Correct.
Not hearing that there's any
really nothing else
in terms of little things even.
Not really, no. It doesn't really make a substantial difference.
Okay.
So even an alarm system, for example, you can put a fire or burglar alarm in your house, and it'll save you a little bit off your insurance, but the installation and the monitoring fees are going to cost you way more in the long run.
So even like a security system.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. They're small discounts. I mean, if it gives you peace of mind, it's important to have, but it's not going to give you substantial.
Yeah. Well, the personal reason is. What's the difference between an insurance broker and a direct insurer?
Definitely. So an insurance broker, their main responsibility is to their client. They represent a lot of different companies, and they can access the company that best fits their client's needs. Every client does not fit into one box, so sometimes we need to go outside, maybe piecemeal things together. A broker has that flexibility. Mm-hmm. Their main duty is to the customer. An agent who's a captive agent, for example, they have one company. They work for that one company. Their main...
what do you mean by a captive agent?
A captive agent is an insurance agent that just has one company. So
okay, they're an agent for one specific
they're
called
company.
A captive agent. Okay.
Yeah, right. And so they have one product to offer, and if their customer doesn't fit into the underwriting guidelines or the appetite, then they don't have anything to do for that customer. Right.
Right.
So
similar, we experience that in lending.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds like it's a similar.
But the main benefit, I'd say, of using an agent is to have somebody who understands all these little nuances of the insurance policy and can help select the products and the coverages that best fit their needs. That's the main thing. And then outside of that, there's the direct writers where you go online and you buy your insurance. And when you do that, the rates can be good at times, but you don't get the expertise of somebody who knows what they're doing. So you get these pre-packaged policies that many times are not giving you the best coverages that you may or may not be aware that you're missing. So
interesting. I didn't even know that you could get them.
Like you go buy your Geico online. You can even buy homeowners insurance through Geico online.
I know. Okay, Geico. Yeah. So that's one that's like an online.
Yeah. So you miss out on the expertise of somebody that can point out things that are missing that you may have no idea about, or like code upgrade or lots of other little things.
Okay. Is there any recent legislation that homeowners may want to know about?
There's lots of ordinances for agents as far as requiring more continuing education and that affect our industry, not so much the consumer directly. The main ones that I can think about are the changes in flood insurance. In the last several years, we've seen gross fluctuations in rates because the government has come in and say, change the regulations, that skyrocketed the premium for a couple of years, and then they realized they made a big mistake, and it took a period of time for them to change that to where they could get the rates back down to make it somewhat affordable. So on the flood insurance front,
that's actually, let's talk about that a minute, because that's actually a really big topic for us on the coast, because we have areas, parts of Pescadero that do flood. So what's happening the latest front on flood insurance?
I'd say the main thing for a consumer to be aware of is if they're in a flood zone, they should purchase what's called an elevation certificate.
Oh, okay.
So you get a surveyor to come out and look at your specific property, and they put that specific property, show where it is in relation to the overall floodplain. So you can get a much more accurate rate for your insurance, and sometimes can save you a lot of money, even remove you from the requirement of having flood insurance. If you don't do that, then you're just grouped in this huge floodplain area, and it's more of a group rate. So that's the main thing.
That's
I think that people should understand.
That's really great information.
I mean, I've had some clients that have been able to get totally out of flood insurance, and other ones that have been able to greatly reduce their rate by having that done. And on the other side of things, sometimes it works the opposite way as well. You can actually
Yeah.
spend more money. So it is a little bit of a gamble, but I think overall it's a good tool. Google Maps and all the tools that we have today are a huge benefit to me, because I can get eyes on a house even out of the area and see the overall condition of it, because that goes back to insurability.
Yeah.
If I drive by a house and it's just torn up, the roof looks like it's 50 years old, those are all things that I'm going to address with the client to say, before we insure it, so what's your time frame on replacing that roof? If they can tell me, I'm going to replace that roof immediately, then I'll still try to put it with a preferred carrier.
Okay.
And also the remodeling is a huge gig. If somebody buys a house and says, well, I'm going to take 6 months to remodel that house, an insurance company is not really going to want to insure that house unless it's being lived in. So there's other products that we'd have to put in place while that remodel goes on to make sure that we're giving them the best coverage available, but also insuring it properly so that they don't have coverage issue if the house is vacant and they sustain a loss.
Usually I'll give them 2 insurers, because we're not encouraged to give them just one, and say, before you remove this contingency, I want you to make sure that this house can be insured, and that there's no issues with the house, and that it's affordable, that there aren't any issues, from the price wise. So that's when they would call Adam, and then I follow up. I'm either speaking with Adam, we're either having ongoing conversations, or I'm following up with the client, and I do not let them remove that contingency until I know that we have the right or the bid for their insurance. So let's go back to the roof. I'm seeing more metal roofs on the coast.
Yeah.
You said that there was potentially a price break if there was a metal roof, and so is it a certain type of metal roof, and what kind of a price break?
Typically it's about 5%, more or less, and the metal roofs, the clay tile roofs, those are the 2 main roof types that get the credits. There are those concrete composite shingles that you see. They're kind of those are not getting the discount right now, and I'm not really sure why. I feel like they should, but it's typically the metal roofs and the clay tile roofs where you'll get that roof credits. So yeah, and it does make a difference. There's a lot of different discounts that and every insurance company has different types of discounts, but the age of construction can make a difference. Yeah. They give new buyers, a discount.
New buyers?
New buyers can even get a discount, because a lot of the companies.
What do you mean by new buyers? You mean
you buy a house that's brand new to you can get a discount for it.
Like
a new purchase credit.
Like a first time.
Not a first time, but if I live in my house and I go buy a new house, I can actually get a new buyer, a new purchase credit.
A new purchase. Oh.
Because they want to grab those customers while they're hot in the market of trying to buy insurance, so they bring them a little bit of a price break to make their payments more competitive.
Just so you know, that your industry goes after the newlyweds too.
Oh, definitely.
Yes, I remember when we were newly married. Oh my gosh, we had all the carriers calling us. So this is great information. Is there anything else that is on your radar that you think is important to share with either coastside homeowners, even coastside renters? We're all about local and supporting our local communities.
For the average insurance buyer, I think the main thing to consider is essentially just to pay attention to the details, or have a trusted advisor that can pay attention to those details for you and advise you in the purchasing of insurance. As far as homeowners insurance goes, it's real important just to keep your house well maintained. Most claims come from poor maintenance, and so if you're trying to mitigate loss and in the long run save yourself money on insurance, keep your house well maintained. Make sure everything is all buttoned up, so that you don't have those water losses or those those little losses that you need to use insurance for that in the end drive your rates up.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I can imagine happening is that these leaks happen in these homes, little water leaks, which were brought to our attention last year with the drought. And there was a big effort to, have people check those leaks and make sure that there wasn't any leaks going on. But that can lead to mold. And so then if you find out you have mold, who's your first call going to be to? It's going to be to your insurance carrier.
Sure.
So what is your take on sort of coverage related to mold? We are in a moist environment here.
Yeah, most policies have really limited coverage for mold. So insurance policies are meant to cover the sudden and accidental losses. So the valve,
sudden and accidental. Okay.
the valve bursts and floods the house. That's an easy one. It's covered all day long. It's those small maintenance leaks, a lot of times, that are not covered. Things when you start to get dry rot, wet rot, you notice your floor is spongy. That's a maintenance issue. It's been dripping, dripping, dripping for a period of weeks, maybe months. It's not going to be covered by your home insurance.
That's a really, really huge point, because, you know, sometimes we'll go into homes and obviously we see the full spectrum of, you know, a home that's very well maintained compared to a home that hasn't been maintained. And, you know, no judgment, because there's all kinds of reasons why a home may not be maintained. But when it comes to, you know, you're going to sell your home or someone's going to buy it, it is a factor that's going to be looked at. So, yeah, that's really important. Does inventory make a difference? Do you have clients that actually keep an inventory, and does that help?
It definitely helps after a loss. I tell my clients to use a video camera and walk around the house with the video camera, just talking about what they have, you know, when they acquired it, how much it costs. And that really, really helps after a loss for themselves to realize what they have to remember, because you're so stressed out after a loss. And the insurance company is going to require some sort of an inventory from you, especially if you have a lot of antiques or special, you know, crystal. You know, everybody has furniture and clothing, kitchenwares. Those are kind of standard things the insurance company expects somebody to have. Especially if you have special items, you need to document it in some way. So it's really important to have that videotape, you know, to document all that stuff, for yourself, and then keep it obviously off the premises, you know, in the cloud or at your office or your church.
Yeah, so that's another really good one.
Yeah, really.
It's on my list of things to do.
Really important to have. Yeah. Back to the jewelry. A lot of times people have theft losses and they don't have a schedule, so they're like, oh, my house was robbed and I lost $15,000 worth of jewelry. Well, most home policies have sublimits. So that's the main thing. So if you have specialty items like jewelry, silverware, stamp collections, fine arts. Nobody really has furs anymore, but furs. Yeah, fine arts as well. A lot of people have
really
high value,
nice art collections.
And they don't think to schedule it at all. One other thing would be underground pipes. I've had some clients who have sustained some large losses by the pipe from the main line coming into their home. Most of the time those go down the driveway. You know, those pipes deteriorate and break. Any underground pipes are never covered by your home policy.
But to your point, that is something that maybe a homeowner might think would be covered.
They call us right away, and it's like, unfortunately.
So you're saying no underground pipes?
No underground
pipes
are ever covered. Okay. Once the pipes are in your house, you know, they're covered for, again, the sudden and accidental losses, the bursting, you know.
What if it's accessible pipes under the house in the crawl space?
If they cause damage to the house, a lot of times they won't. Those would be covered. As soon as they're above ground.
The cement.
Yeah, pretty much anything subterranean.
Subterranean, okay. Because even though the pipes under the house are under the house, underground, they're accessible because
they're accessible.
In the crawl space.
Yeah, because they
accessibility.
Essentially, they don't want anything that's under the ground that's more susceptible to rust and collapse and roots and all sorts of things. So, yeah. A lot of times you'll just get a huge water bill on you. You know.
Well, I know. I think that's important, is to kind of monitor your water, and if you see, you know, put it on a spreadsheet, and if you see that your water charges are going up, that's one way to tell if you have a leak. Yeah.
From a property's perspective, you know, obviously, you know, termites and rodents, and there's a lot of things like that aren't going to be covered by your insurance. But you know, for the most part, I think secondary to the property is to make sure that people have liability coverage. So that people just think that their home policy is solely for their house. But the whole major second part of that policy is comprehensive personal liability. If they're sued by anybody for some sort of personal injury, you know, bodily injury, property damage, negligence.
Are you talking about if they have a handyman come to the house and he falls off a ladder? Is that what you mean by liability?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, you have a worker that comes to your house. That worker, you should make sure that they're insured with their own workers' comp, their own liability. I'm talking more about, you know, if I'm out playing golf and I hit a golf ball and hit somebody in the head, or my dog bites somebody, or I have a friend over and they trip on the skateboard that my kid left in the driveway. Those types of losses.
Okay.
You know, and then personal injury is a huge one these days, which is like defamation, slander. So you know, your teenagers bullying somebody online. Those types of things can be covered by the home policy. So they're really important to know.
That sounds like a whole topic in itself. That's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
real, especially with,
Definitely.
so then the
that's
whole
a-
liability is incorporating all this online world.
Can, definitely.
So in regards to liability, what is the biggest claim you're seeing in liability policies right now?
Oh,
Or the most common.
most liability claims are obviously from the auto insurance. And, when you're driving your car around, that's the biggest time. That
Right,
you're
but I
gonna-
mean in the home, is it
Liability-
somebody trips on a cement crack?
You
Or
know,
what's the most common one, if there is?
the most common one I'd say is the off-premises property damage liability. So,
Off premises.
yeah, your shopping cart gets away from you at the grocery store and you scratch somebody's car.
Off premise.
Because the liability coverage is worldwide. So it covers not just at the home, but it covers off the premises as well. There's lots of times somebody trips and falls down somebody's stairs coming in or out of the house. Those kind of the most common ones on the premises that you'll see. Just simple trip and falls happens.
So if somebody tripped on coming out of my house on my stairs, my policy would cover that.
There's two coverages that would cover it. The one is the medical payments, which pays regardless of legal liability. That's for any medical expenses that are incurred on your premises. If you're then sued and held negligent because there was an uneven step or it was a little loose, that's when the liability coverage would kick in.
Okay.
And pay up to whatever limit that would be. And I would say buy the highest limit that you can afford, because the liability coverage is cheap.
Okay. Well, back to the stairs. Do you need to have the railing in order to be covered? Or would the carrier say, well, you don't have a railing, so we're not going to cover
And
that?
the carriers a lot of times inspect the homes. So they go and take a look at it and say, there's no railing there. As a condition of continuing the coverage, we want a railing installed within 30 days, and we want documentation that it's been installed.
Got it.
That's typically what might happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know railings are important.
Yeah, definitely.
Insurance is one of those things that we'd like to not think about, but sometimes we do have to think about. And when you have the right coverage with the right carrier, it gives you all kinds of peace of mind that then you don't have to think about it anymore. So anyway, thank you, Adam.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure.